Today we're starting a new series on women in transition. Nat, you just went through a big transition. Is that what inspired us?
Yeah, I'd say so. Teacher to podcaster's been a pretty big transition.
But other people making big transitions have also been reaching out to us through Reframeables. So we decided it would be fun to feature their stories from time to time. Regular people like us. Like our guest today is a woman who went from being a teacher to working at Costco and built a popular TikTok account of close to 40,000 followers on sharing that story. She says this transition was the right choice for her and has funnily meant a better quality of life.
But first, if you've been following Anne's Dilemma from episode 57, what we called the Bourdain Dilemma, you'll remember that she was agonizing about asking for a gift back, a signed cookbook from famed chef Anthony Bourdain. It was surprisingly controversial. Some people were adamant that she could not ask for it back, but I offered what some listeners felt was a surprising perspective about how this ask could in fact be done well. Here's an update from Anne. What's happened, Anne? Give us the update.
Okay, so we're taking this in baby steps, but I definitely felt as though the reframeable conversation really reframed my thinking around this. I was actually able to talk to my dad, and it was a very casual, hey, I heard so-and-so is packing up and moving their stuff. Could you check with him if he still has an Anthony Bourdain book? I'd love to get it back. And he went, oh, my dad goes, oh, okay. Yeah, okay, send me a text about that. I haven't sent the text yet. That was 2 weeks ago. But I am going to, because my goal is to get the book back for my stepfather for his 70th birthday in September. So I feel like a baby step has been made. And I think the biggest step, to be honest, was getting it out there. And so now I just have to send that text and follow through and follow up. But I have to say, this is huge. I have a feeling it's coming back my way. And even if it's not coming back my way, I've put it out there and it's kind of out in the universe and off my shoulders and out of my brain and in the universe. And then the universe is going to decide what's going to happen with that book.
Okay, Beck, I would say that Anne is doing exactly what we talk about on here, about reframing through the Reframeables perspective. She's not having just one conversation and then expecting, bam, like a solution. She's working through something.
And it is very idiosyncratic to her specific situation, isn't it?
Yeah, and she's iterating and sharing. So I'm all here for it.
And now our interview with Maggie Perkins about transitioning from teacher to Costco worker. Maggie is a former teacher in the midst of completing her PhD in education and is a teacher advocate. She is a mom of 2, and on the day this episode airs, she'll be working at a brand new Costco that has just opened its doors in her town. And she's pumped.
Thanks, Maggie, for being with us.
I'm glad to be here.
So, tell us, what are you transitioning out of, or what did you recently transition out of?
This is my first year since 2014 that I'm not a classroom educator, and I now work for Costco.
That is a really big shift.
It is.
As a teacher who has just left a big career in teaching, that's a big shift away from the classroom. What does it feel like?
So in a way, it feels like I'm just doing something similar, but then some days it feels like I'm doing something completely new, but I haven't felt like jolted by this transition. I think of it sort of like I'm using all of my soft skills that I did as a teacher, but just in a new environment. I don't feel like I've had to learn new challenging skills. Like I've learned new procedures, certainly, because I didn't have a cash register when I was a teacher, but I haven't had to learn anything that was like a whole new skill set. And I just feel that I transitioned really not seamlessly, but just like it feels right for me. And I've just been very pleasantly like surprised by how good this transition has been.
So it was the right decision for you.
Oh my gosh, yes. I wish I had left teaching a lot sooner. And I know that as like teachers and former teachers, there's like things we're afraid to say because of like how it might sound or be, but like I should have left teaching a really long time ago. And if I'm honest with myself, I don't even know if I should have been a teacher in the first place. Like the red flags that I look back on and see in my first 2-3 years of teaching, they were there when I was student teaching. Like I recently reread some diary entries from when I was in college student teaching, and the stuff that I was writing about just like my fatigue or like the things that I was being pushed to do that were not appropriate, like those were huge systemic problems. And I just thought that, oh, it'll get better. And like I was lying to myself. Like I knew in my gut that this was how it was going to be. But then that like teacher martyr idea of like, this is how you measure how good of a teacher you are. I was trying to push for that. And I just pushed myself into it and changed my whole identity. And I just kept forcing myself through.
Like, did you go through a phase where you were, I want to change the system. Like the system is messed up. How can I mean, you seem like a proactive person. You probably went down that road too. What needs to change in the system and how can I make this better for myself? So you tried that too.
Yeah, that's the whole reason I'm a PhD student. I mean, I was teaching for a number of years, and at a point I decided that the reason why teachers were struggling was because maybe they didn't have a great teacher education program. And I knew that I had come from a really, really well-prepared teacher education program, but that in my state and in my region, there was other ones that were just basically teacher factories. And so my goal was to study teacher education and then sort of work my way up through a different program, one that I may have viewed as needing fixing, and become influential in pedagogy and, you know, the way we teach future teachers. So that's what I started my PhD doing. And then as I was in that, I began learning that it's not just that the teachers were underprepared. It's that like, this is systemic. Like the most prepared teacher in the world can't survive in an environment like this, not in a healthy way. So I did put on that little cape of I can fix this, and then realize that it's just deeply systemic.
Yeah, it really is. Now, just by way of context, you already mentioned that you're in the States, but I think geography means something. So where are you at?
I'm in Georgia. So I spent the most of my teaching career in the state of Georgia, which is a state without unions. It's a right to work state. You can and will be hired or fired without reasonable cause. And I've also taught in a union state, but it was Florida, which is Florida. And so, yeah, I've never been in like one of those states like Washington or Massachusetts or Connecticut where there's just like, you know, they treat teachers really well. I've always had to like fight for my life as a teacher.
Which is a very different circumstance than what I just left. I mean, 20 years was a wonderful career for me in public education in Toronto, and our union is strong and our voices are very united. And sure, there are lots and lots of systemic issues within the system writ large, but the actual union power does mean so much. So what you're speaking out of is so dramatically different. And yet I find it so fascinating that we both still, in the end, left. When we found each other on TikTok, there's just something really interesting in that, because TikTok as a space, it took me a long time to come to it because I really didn't feel like it was a space where I, as a woman in my 40s, could find people that I would connect with. And you were actually one of the first faces that I sort of saw on there and went, oh, this is interesting. I didn't know at that time about your doctoral work, so I didn't see any of the like little mini connections that you and I had, but there was something about that space. So why TikTok? Like what is happening in that space that sort of brought you in there, and why people like me? Like why are we finding you?
Yeah, I think TikTok is so fascinating. I love my For You page. Like it can be anything from a Maine Coon cat to like a cooking thing to somebody talking about like social justice. And it's just wonderful. I love that it's an algorithm. So when people complain about like, oh, it's just girls dancing in bikinis, I'm like, that's the formula for you. That's what it thinks you want because you've trained it that way. So I think it's really diverse as a place of education. And like initially when it started, yeah, it was like mostly silly stuff, but it's really evolved a lot. And I like TikTok for reasons similar to like why a lot of employers like remote work as a viable future, because if you're seeking a remote employee, you can search the whole nation or even like a whole continent or a whole time zone for an employee and find the best match for you. And I find that TikTok similarly amplifies my experience and allows people to connect with me and me to connect with other people that I never would have met otherwise because of like my geographic region. Like if I was just having these experiences and these feelings at my school, I wouldn't really meet other people, maybe a couple other people who feel the same way. But because of TikTok, I've made so many connections like you and just other creators who I'm like, we are not alone. It's both comforting and challenging to see how big these problems are, but then also being like, hashtag qualitative research is a thing. And I can get on that hashtag and see other people making jokes about being a drowning PhD student or meaningful little snippets. There's just so many ways to connect that are humorous and intellectual and nuanced. And it just expands my worldview, I think. And that's why I like TikTok.
Is the identity sort of you're investigating on TikTok more the PhD student, or it's more the having transitioned out of education, or it's both? I've seen both.
Yeah, I'm more so talking about what hurts the most, I guess, or what rises up the most frequently. And so in the past, I did talk a good bit about PhD stuff because I was a full-time PhD student. And now I'm not full-time, I'm part-time. I think it was Stephen King who said, write what you know, or somebody else who said, write what you know. And I think about that a lot, and I just talk about what I know. So my most immediate experience right now is being a Costco employee, but I view that through a lens of I'm a transition teacher, I'm a qualitative researcher, I'm an autistic woman, and these things that are my lens into the world. I'm a wife, I'm a mother. So I talk about what I immediately experience, but through the lenses of the multi-layered person that I am.
And why Miss Frizzle, or the millennial Miss Frizzle? I like that.
It's because my students were starting to find my TikTok. They would come into homeroom and be like, I saw you on my For You page this weekend. And I was like, oh. So I very quickly made my name like an anonymous name, but I still wanted it to be connected to my personality. And so Miss Frizzle was taken. That was just going to be Miss Frizzle. So I was like, we'll go with an alliteration. So Millennial Miss Frizzle it was. And I just wanted to have a place on the internet to speak where I didn't have my full name on there. I mean, my name is Maggie Perkins. I don't hide that. But for a while, I was in a really hostile environment and I did need to hide my real name.
But the Frizzle is connected.
Oh, yeah. So the TV character, I don't know if it's just an American show, but she's this like kind of funky teacher who takes her students on these field trips and their school bus transforms to go like underwater and outer space.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
And she just like wears fun clothes. And her motto is make mistakes, take chances, and get messy. And I just really like that as like a perspective towards life too.
Right. That's good.
Yeah, the Magic School Bus is like what school should have been for so many people.
Exactly.
So that's pretty neat that you've channeled that one. So as you are in the midst of working on your doctoral work and working at Costco and being a mom to two little ones, you said that your littles are like 3 and 4, yeah?
Yes, they are.
So they're very little. Like that's a lot on the go. You're wearing a lot of hats. And when we chatted the other day on TikTok back and forth, I had made mention of your Costco experience being like really place-based, almost like research in real time, right? And you said, can we talk about that on the podcast? And I was thinking about that. So what is it about that space and place of Costco? So there's the physicality of the space, but also then the people that make up that space. So what is it that has sort of made you inherently hopeful about this new direction that you are going in your life?
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. It's very multi-layered. So there's the physical space, there's the environment that's more than the concrete floors and the huge beams. It's the people in it, and it's the posture of the company as well. And the way I call it is like the culture of care. So like we talk about company culture, but at Costco, it's very pervasive that we exist for the benefit of our members. We don't exist for like a multi-billion dollar like corporate grab, right? So like it's interesting to me because it is a multi-billion dollar company. It's wildly successful, but it all exists for the members. Like everything we do is from the perspective of whoever walks through the store, how can we meet their needs? And what is the best value that we can bring them? And in a lot of ways, it's similar to what a school environment should be. Like everyone who walks in the door, what are their needs? How can we meet their needs? And how can we make this a really enjoyable experience for them that also benefits them? And I just really like it. Like it's hard to describe what I like about it, but everything about the building is intentional. Like Costco builds from the ground up, and I'm really lucky to be part of a fresh, brand new warehouse. Like I was hired for a new location, which means like we watched it be built from the ground up. So the position of things is intentional. Like it's engineered specifically for Costco's needs. So it means that like in education where we do backwards design, they begin with the end in mind. How do they want people to navigate the building? How do they want people to feel? How should people be greeted? How much space do we need to greet people? Just like every detail is thought of and matters. And that's just something that I think schools could benefit a lot from too, is that like, at least where I lived, a lot of middle schools, 6th, 7th, 8th graders, they got a hand-me-down old high school building. They didn't get a building that was made for their needs, that has rooms to be in and places to spread out. They just got a hand-me-down, and you can feel the difference, and students can feel the difference that they're in a building from the 1960s versus like, look at that high school. They have a beautiful facility. That's where all the money went.
I do notice at Costco that it's quite warm inside. I'm always like, wow, this is a huge warehouse, but yet I'm so cozy warm. Is that part of
I also feel quite warm, but I'm like sweating because I'm working. I don't know why it's so warm. Maybe it's just because of the bodies literally moving through it. But then if you think about it too, just from an engineering perspective, like those coolers that all the freezer stuff is in, they're huge. And so although they're keeping things cold, they're generating an enormous amount of heat. And so if you look at the ventilation above them, it's supposed to be sucking it out. And if you have an older Costco building, then you also have natural lighting. They've transitioned now to LED lights, but that natural lighting does kind of incubate like a greenhouse effect inside the Costco.
Interesting.
I like though that, Becca, that's a good metaphor. I'm so warm. It's like a hug.
It is like a warm hug in Costco. Although it's interesting, it's kind of cool to hear you be so positive, because sometimes I haven't known what to think of shopping in this big warehouse and buying in such big bulk. Like, should I be questioning that? That's for another time. Like, does that kind of get discussed? Like, is this environmentally a good thing, a bad thing?
Yeah, Costco is actually very intentional about waste, sustainability, and all of this. And again, it's present in the physical environment, but it's also a philosophical stance. So like in the parking lot of our Costco, instead of having like the greenery and like, you know, the concrete stuff between the cars, medians, and that's what it's called. So instead of having grass that needs to be watered and plants need to be tended to, they are doing the landscaping with different types of rocks and pebbles and arid type stuff. And so it doesn't have to waste hundreds of thousands of gallons a year to maintain a beautiful appearance. It's made more like a desert type look. And then like returns, like food waste and stuff. So they have partnerships in every city where any food waste that can be goes to the local zoos. So like the bears and the otters and all this, they're going to be getting food waste from Costco. And then if it can't go to the zoo, it goes to pig farms and it's used for composting too. And then waste that is consumable for humans is partnered with food banks. So like, let's say somebody returns a pack of goldfish and we can't resell those. They ate 5 bags. They didn't like them. They returned them. That can be comped out to a local food bank. So then it can go in kids' lunches and stuff. So that's just for food returns. But in terms of like other stuff that like, why should we be selling this much? They are changing the packaging too. So that like, instead of those hard cases for like cashews, they're selling them in thinner plastic bags. So everywhere they can, there's like a whole department of sustainability, and Costco is taking measures across the board from literally the ground up to figure out where can we be more sustainable and increase, you know, our efforts for sustainability. So like natural lighting, LED lighting, gray water cycling. Costco does enormous things, and we consider this on a global scale. It's actually really impressive how they're doing it.
So if you were giving advice to other women transitioning, I mean, did you spend a lot of time researching the kind of company you wanted to be working with? Or is this a trait you have where you find what's good and where you end up? Because either would be interesting. What advice would you give, or how did you end up in Costco?
I ended up in Costco because they were building a new warehouse in my town. And at the time where I had transitioned out of teaching, I didn't yet have like a dream job or something lined up. I mean, I started applying in like April of 2022. So this past April, all the way through July, I applied to probably 100 jobs, all in like ed tech or ed adjacent type careers. And I was thinking of anything I could do. I was just throwing spaghetti at the wall, hoping something stuck. And I wasn't paying attention to like company goals or like seeing if it meshed with my goals, because I just needed a job. And I've always known like the integrity of Costco from a member's perspective. And so when they started building the Costco in my town, I just applied. Costco kind of happened to me. And when I initially applied, I was like, this could be a really great job. Maybe it'll be something even long term. And then as soon as I started working for the company, I immediately understood that like, I want to be part of Costco. Like, I'm not looking for any other careers. Like, I had initially signed up even with a career coach who was going to help me, you know, find something like long-term while I worked at Costco. And then I very quickly told them, I was like, we're on the Costco thing. This is it. I don't think that's good advice for other people though. So when you sent those questions earlier, I did jot down a few thoughts about advice for other people transitioning their careers. And I think the biggest one is to listen with your gut and to look for red flags early on, because we have a different type of intuition. But I think for a lot of women, that's also paired with this excitement at new opportunities. So when somebody says, this is promising, this is good, here's an opportunity for you, like me personally, I'm very jumping on board. And so I need to be more cautious. I think I need to be willing to walk away and be willing to say no and not be so like fast to jump on something. And then the other thing is that I had viewed my teacher transition as like kind of something I wanted to do. But then it wasn't until like July or August that I said, this is my whole thing. Like, this is my job now. And I was treating it as if it was my job. And I think a lot of the time people treat their transition as their side hustle. And so I would say transitioning is got to be the whole thing. Like, you have to put all your eggs in this basket and have very clearly aligned goals, like backwards design as a teacher. Like, where do I want to be in 2 years, in 5 years, and how do I get there? And if that means walking away from education or walking away from your firm or wherever you are, then that's what you're going to do. It's not your side hustle. It's the whole thing.
Dum, 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 dum.
Hey, Reframeables, a little housekeeping. Don't forget to rate, review, or subscribe wherever you listen to your podcasts if you like what we're doing here on Reframeables. Your feedback really supports this reframing project of ours. Also, please sign up for our weekly newsletter, which comes with a free delicious recipe from Nat. Check us out over on Patreon too, where we do mini episodes which we call Life Hacks and Enhancers, our 5 best things in a week. On Patreon, you can become a monthly donor for as little as $2 a month, or you could even tip us on our new coffee account. Lastly, tell us what you like and what you want to hear more of. We love feedback and getting to know you, our listeners. All the links are in our show notes. Love, Reframeables.
Dum, 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 dum.
And can I just say, are you an inherently courageous person?
That's hard to say. So yes and no, but I think a lot of it is because I am neurodivergent. And so I don't view societal structures the same way that neurotypical people do. So something that I do might not be because I'm brave. It might be because I don't view the rules the same way as other people do. So like having babies while in grad school in a pandemic, just jumping headlong into something, I don't have the same caution. I could benefit from a little bit more caution, I think. So I don't know if I'm a courageous person, but I do things with regard for my future and less regard for the immediate consequences.
Right.
So that appears to be brave, like quitting teaching and working for Costco. That appears to be like a brave transition, but it was just kind of impulsive too.
It does really seem, though, like you are somebody who has taken the time to learn who you are. So like when you say, listen to your instincts, watch for those red flags. I mean, that isn't maybe as easy for some. And so it's pretty amazing that you can kind of offer that suggestion, because perhaps it sort of gives somebody else permission to even consider that option. We have developed a resource, and you've seen it, so but we've developed a resource called The Science of Reframing, and we share tools because many people will listen to our show and they like the concept of reframing and they've heard about it maybe from their therapist or whatever, but then they're like, well, what does it actually mean though? Like, how can I put it into practice? So we developed this tool and wanted to sort of offer it to folks to sort of help them get through to the other side of a hurdle with a list of essentially resources that they could lean on, pull on, like look to as they navigate life. And so we had sent you that list, and we're just going to read it through because the list is long-ish but useful. So one way of reframing a life struggle would be to have somebody's listening ear, whether that's a friend or a family member, where they offer no words, just ears. Another would be a trained professional's words of wisdom. Another tool would be taking a pause, so time alone to contemplate through meditation. Then there was the journaling or painting or art making tool, which is much more tangible. There's exercise, so obviously sweat boosting endorphins. And then some people, teacher types out there might really get into this, diagrams. So actually writing out pro and con lists like Venn diagrams. Then there's, for those of us who are really into nature, the natural world, walking in nature. For someone like me, cooking. Cooking is actually a tool that really helps me in my reframing. And then conversations with a trusted friend. So not that first one where it's just the listening, but actually an engaged dialogue. So out of that list, what would you say would be one or two reframing tools that you have used in your transition?
I mean, the combination kind of the one where someone's listening to you, but then also a conversation. I do that a lot. I have a couple like very close friends who the rapport with us is, we'll say, hey, this is what's going on. And then she will respond with, are you seeking advice, feedback, or do you need to just say things? And so we kind of have that existing as a foundation in our relationship. And she's also been going through a career transition at the exact same time as me. So it's been very cool to have that ongoing thread in that friendship where some days I just listen and some days I give her feedback and some days she just listens and some days she gives me feedback. So I would say like a very solid combination of the listening and just like, I'm here. What do you need?
Which is really just finding your people, isn't it?
That's cool. That's cool that you just intuitively together discovered that that's something that you could name. I need feedback or I just need a listening ear. That's really cool. Like, I feel like that's something I have had to navigate with my spouse, but I wouldn't instinctively think to do that with a friend, a girlfriend, to be like, can we practice a more careful conversation? I mean, you and me, Nat, we don't have to sort of talk that out, but I could see with a girlfriend, it's not my sister, that would be really useful. That's cool.
Yeah, we definitely owe it to Brene Brown's podcast, though, because she was an avid listener of Brene Brown, and she would just reference things that Brene says. And I would be like, what? And she's like, Maggie, are you telling me you don't listen to Brene Brown's podcast? And this was like the beginning of 2020. And she was like, we know you can't afford therapy. You need to be listening to Brene Brown. Like, so I was just started like just absorbing so much of these podcasts, and it became like a second language in my relationship with my friend. And it's been just a really beautiful thing that she and I want to have a podcast someday too, where we just talk about that, how like our parallel transitions have, been supported by this like intentionality, and how we grow individually and together and professionally, like all these overlaps, but just because we are both in this transition at the same time, that we'd like to have more intentional conversations about it too.
That's great.
Thanks, Brene.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Thanks. Yeah. I know that like the research community is somewhat divided on Brene. Like some people are like, oh yeah, we love Brene Brown. And some people are like, But I'm team Brene. Like, I feel like if it's benefiting you and if it's helping you and adding to your life, then like go for it. And it's adding to my life, so I'm team Brene.
Yeah, I am too.
Well, I was going to say back that if you went back to episodes like 1, 2, or 3, I think I had a few moments in there of being like, meh, Brene. And Rebecca was totally team Brene. So, which just highlights, right? Like that people come to not just therapy, but even to advice giving and receiving at different points. But we all need each other to kind of practice the process. So I'm team Brene now. Bring her.
Are you not? Are you though?
A little bit. I'll give her a go.
You have to go listen to 3 episodes and then tell me. And tell me which ones.
And then have like a real opinion. It's true. It's absolutely true. Millennial Ms. Frizzle, we appreciate so much that you took this time. We know that you are navigating many little humans in that household who have their own needs, but we are excited that we're starting this series with someone who has made such a dramatic transition, because I think that not everybody is going to or needs to or feels brave enough to. That courageous piece is definitely in there, but maybe hearing examples of other folks navigating and going through them, I don't know, it just opens doors.
The one thing that keeps occurring to me, and is this something that we didn't really touch on this, but just as we close, is that being a teacher, it's such a label with distinction almost, right? You are a teacher. So is that kind of a funny one for you? And that's been an interesting part of the transition to say, I work at Costco, which doesn't have a prestigious label, right? You can be a lawyer or you work at a grocery store, and we all have these notions and labels we put on things, that what is a good job. So I don't know if you just want to speak to that, because I just find that might be useful for listeners just as we close.
Yes, I'm still having trouble articulating this fully, but it comes down to, so the teacher identity is grounded in this like higher moral cause, like that we help other people. It's a helping profession. And then we view service professions as like divided between like moral ones and then like consumer ones. And like working retail, which is what I do now, technically, is not viewed as like a higher moral calling. It's just like a job to get by. But my quality of life is so much higher at Costco than it was as a teacher. And I realized that I was using kind of like that dopamine hit of like whenever somebody say, oh, what do you do? I'm a teacher. I could never. Oh my gosh, good for you. I got high off that. It's sort of like if people found out I taught 6th grade, they're like, how could you? That's amazing. Good for you. And I needed people to feed me that because otherwise I was going to burn out. Like I needed other people to affirm my goodness through my identity as a teacher. And now I know my own happiness because I actually am happy. I'm not relying on other people to pat me on the back and boost me up. And also I know that I work for a company that I believe in, like it has integrity versus like in school buildings, a lot of shady stuff was going on. School structures are not built on integrity. They're also built on neoliberal capitalism, pumping students through and making happy little workers. And so it's just like, I don't have to claim my identity as a teacher anymore, but I do still introduce my TikToks with my phrase, like, I used to be a teacher, now I work at Costco, because I really want to trouble that idea of what's a morally good job and what's like, she's just getting a paycheck, or like, that's not like noble. It's not a noble profession to work retail. And like, I think it is pretty noble to look Mr. Howard in the eye and know that his wife is at home and he's getting groceries for his family and taking care of her, and like, notice things about our members' lives, or like to go the extra step to help a mom who's got 3 kids in her buggy and is in a time crunch. Like, I think those human connections are noble and they are important. Yeah. And then also the reason I say like that, I start my videos by saying, I used to be a teacher, now I work at Costco. That matters to me because it troubles people's idea of what a high and low paying profession is, because people think teachers make enough money to live and they really don't. And so it's like, it's a commentary on how poorly teachers are treated and how well Costco employees are treated. So I'm probably going to keep using that phrase because I want those conversations to stir up and to bubble up and for people to be like, oh shoot, we're treating teachers badly enough that they go work at Costco, but also be like, wait, what is Costco doing that's good enough for a teacher to leave this profession with a master's degree, 8 years of experience, a PhD student? Why is she going to work at Costco?
I find that an interesting discussion. Yeah, so thanks for bringing that up.
And I like the idea of it bubbling up too, that it's not like just sort of a quick answer that's given. That's something that we really value on here, is that it's not like there's something so immediately able to be taken away and digested and then it's done. Like now we get to move on to the next topic. It's like, no, I want to sit with that for a while and ponder. And then actually sometimes it even loops back in. So we may be looping you back in, Millennial Miss Frizzle.
Yeah. It would be so interesting to do like a check-in in like 6 months or a year, because like it's going to change and evolve. Like it's a new chapter in my life and it's literally a new Costco building. Like it opens on Tuesday, like in 2 days, we open our doors for the first time to our community. And I get sweaty thinking about that. I get excited thinking about that. So it would be very interesting as like seasons change to like check in, see how the transition's going.
Yeah, let's do it.
Well, we're going to take that as permission to ask. Exactly.
Yeah.
Good luck with your opening.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm like so nervous, but it's going to be fun. Like there's good energy in our community about it because there isn't one where we are. It's kind of a rural area. It's mostly a university town. I'm genuinely excited.
Dum 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 dum.